I'm Amanda. The framed document hanging in my home office serves as a constant reminder of the battle I fought and the victory I achieved. It all started with a simple threat: execute this departure agreement or I'll burn everything you've built to ash. Those words, spoken calmly yet with absolute certainty, sent a chill down my spine and set the stage for a corporate nightmare I could have never imagined. I grew up in a small town, with parents who instilled in me the values of hard work, integrity, and attention to detail. My father, a meticulous accountant, taught me the importance of numbers and the power of documentation. My mother, a schoolteacher, encouraged me to think critically and stand up for what was right. These lessons would prove invaluable in the years to come. After graduating from college, I landed a job as an assistant manager at a regional retail location. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but I saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow. I threw myself into the work, reorganizing supplier contracts, developing scheduling systems, and implementing inventory tracking procedures. Within a few years, I'd worked my way up to the manager's position, and our store was leading the region in every key metric. Then, Helena arrived. She was a new regional supervisor, brought in from another division to breathe new life into the struggling stores in our area. The district manager lavished praise on her during our first video call, highlighting her innovative approaches and proven track record. Helena smiled warmly, promising to support us and learn from our expertise. At first, things seemed to go well. She observed our operations, asked thoughtful questions, and complimented my systems. I thought we'd make a great team. But as the weeks went by, I began to notice a pattern. Helena started asking me for detailed reports on all the initiatives I'd implemented over the past few years. She claimed she wanted to understand my thinking and potentially roll out these improvements across other locations. I was happy to help, spending hours documenting my work and handing her a comprehensive guide. A few weeks later, corporate announced a series of new efficiency initiatives, all developed by Helena. Every single idea was mine, but there was no mention of my contribution. I was shocked and confused, trying to convince myself it was a misunderstanding. When I finally confronted her, she calmly explained that this was how leadership worked. She evaluated my ideas, refined them, and presented them to corporate. My job was to execute, hers was to strategize. I felt like I was being petty for wanting recognition, so I let it go. Months passed, and Helena continued to take credit for my work. She presented my seasonal forecasting model as her own, and corporate rewarded her with a bonus while I received a meager cost of living raise. I was starting to feel frustrated and exploited, but I still believed in the company and hoped things would change. Then, the inventory discrepancies started. At first, they were small, a few items marked as damaged that I remembered selling, or returned merchandise that was logged but missing from the rack. I double-checked my records, thinking I must have made a mistake. But as the weeks went by, the gaps became larger. Entire shipments were marked as shortages, even though I'd signed for the complete order. High-value items were disappearing from inventory, with notes indicating transfers to other locations that never happened. I started keeping separate counts of the inventory, just to be sure. Every evening after closing, I'd do a quick audit of the high-value items and compare the numbers to the official records. The results were alarming. Over the course of a few months, I estimated that we were missing over $40,000 worth of merchandise. Only 3 people had access to make these system changes: me, the new assistant manager, and Helena. I knew it wasn't me, and the assistant manager was too inexperienced to pull off such a sophisticated scheme. That left Helena. I should have gone straight to corporate security, but I hesitated. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to believe that there was a reasonable explanation for the discrepancies. So, I decided to confront her directly. I prepared a folder with all the evidence I'd gathered, hoping that we could resolve the issue professionally. When Helena arrived at our store for her scheduled visit, I showed her the folder and explained my concerns. She looked at me calmly, without even opening the file. "What irregularities?" she asked. You're just seeing problems that don't exist because you're tracking things incorrectly. Your job is to manage this location according to corporate procedures, not to create your own shadow accounting system. I tried to argue, but she wouldn't listen. She told me to focus on my responsibilities and let her worry about regional accounting. I left the meeting feeling confused and defeated, wondering if I was the one in the wrong. But the numbers didn't lie, and I knew I had to take action. 2 days later, I sent an email to the district manager, expressing my concerns about the financial irregularities and requesting an audit. I didn't name Helena, but I made it clear that something was wrong. The district manager's assistant called me back within hours, dismissing my request and telling me to address any concerns with my direct supervisor. That's when I realized that I was in serious trouble. Helena and the district manager must be in cahoots. She'd done this before, and she knew exactly how to cover her tracks. I'd just painted a target on myself by asking questions. 3 days later, Helena texted me, asking me to stay after closing. When she arrived, she locked the door behind her and pulled out a stack of papers. "Execute this departure agreement," she said, "or I'll burn everything you've built to ash." I looked at the papers in horror. It was a detailed contract designed to eliminate me from the company and prevent me from working in the retail industry for the next 2 years. It included acknowledgments of performance failures, non-compete clauses, and strict confidentiality agreements. I refused to sign, but she wasn't intimidated. She held up her phone and threatened to call her lawyer. "One call, and you'll be facing charges of theft, fraud, and embezzlement. Your access codes were used to make all the changes to the inventory system. How do you prove you didn't do it?" I felt my hands go numb. She was framing me for her own crimes, and I had no way to prove my innocence. She sat down, sipping her coffee and waiting for me to make a decision. I knew I had no choice but to sign, but I wasn't going down without a fight. As I read through the document, I noticed a clause on page 20 regarding financial accountability and confidentiality. It was deliberately vague, but I saw an opportunity. I made 2 small changes, crossing out during and writing of above it, and changing employee to supervisor. I initialed the changes, just like you're supposed to when modifying a contract, and then continued signing the rest of the pages. Helena didn't even bother to read the document. She was so confident that she'd won that she just collected the papers, smiled, and told me to clean out my desk. I watched her leave, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd just done something that could either save my career or destroy it completely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to my locker and retrieved the small fireproof box I'd been keeping there. Inside were 3 USB drives, each containing copies of all the evidence I'd collected over the past few months. I spent the entire night organizing the data into a comprehensive report, including a timeline of the discrepancies, screenshots of the system entries, and security footage showing that I was elsewhere when the major inventory changes occurred. I attached the signed departure agreement as Exhibit A, with my modified clause clearly visible. Her signature on the witness line effectively verified her own financial responsibility for the theft. It was a risky move, but I had nothing to lose. At 4:37 in the morning, I finally hit the send button. I immediately felt sick to my stomach, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. What if my evidence wasn't enough? What if corporate decided that I was the problem? The next few hours were a blur of anxiety and self-doubt. I paced my apartment, alternating between moments of certainty and waves of terror. Then, at 6:14, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and I almost didn't answer it. But something inside me told me it was important, so I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Amanda, this is Ethan from Corporate Security and Compliance. I'm looking at the report you submitted about the financial irregularities at your former location. Do you have time to talk?" My mouth went dry. "Yes," I managed to choke out. "First off, are you safe? Are you in any immediate danger?" he asked. I was taken aback by the question. "No, I'm at home alone." Nobody knows I contacted you. Good. Now, can you confirm that you compiled all this evidence yourself? And can you walk me through exactly what happened when you signed that departure agreement? So, I told him everything. I described how Helena had threatened me, how she'd coerced me into signing the contract under false pretenses, and how I'd made the small modifications to the document. Ethan listened intently, asking occasional questions for clarification. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Amanda, what you've sent us is potentially crucial evidence in a criminal case. Are you willing to provide a formal statement and testify if necessary? I took a deep breath. Yes, I'm sure. I want to see justice done. Okay, then. I'm opening an official investigation as of right now. Don't contact anyone from your former workplace, and if Helena tries to reach out to you, don't respond. Just let me know immediately. I agreed, and then hung up the phone. Sitting on my couch, I watched the sun rise through the window, wondering what the future held. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from a colleague, Laura, who managed a store in a neighboring district. Corporate security just showed up at our morning meeting and dragged Helena out. She looked terrified. What's going on? I didn't reply. Ethan had warned me not to discuss the case with anyone. But a wave of relief washed over me. Maybe I'd done the right thing after all. Over the next few days, messages from other managers started flooding in. They were all asking the same questions. What happened? Who was behind the investigation? Did I know anything? Helena herself tried to contact me several times, leaving angry voicemails threatening me and demanding that I call her back. I forwarded each message to Ethan, who assured me that she was just panicking. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Helena's scheme was much larger than I'd initially thought. She'd been systematically stealing from the company for years, not just at my location but across multiple territories. The total amount of the theft was estimated to be over $200,000. The district manager was also implicated in the scheme, although he claimed that he'd been unaware of Helena's actions. Prosecutors weren't convinced, but proving his complicity was going to be difficult. In the meantime, I started receiving offers from other companies in the industry. One of our competitors was impressed by how I'd handled the situation and offered me a management position with a significant raise and better benefits. I accepted the offer, relieved to be starting a new chapter in my career. A few months later, Ethan called me to discuss a plea deal that Helena's attorney had proposed. She was willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for avoiding a trial. The prosecution was considering a sentence of 18 months in prison, 5 years of probation, and full restitution to the company and the individual victims. I was initially hesitant. I wanted Helena to face the full consequences of her actions, but Ethan explained that a trial was always uncertain. The plea deal guaranteed a conviction and compensation for the damage she'd caused. Reluctantly, I agreed to the deal. Helena was sentenced to 18 months in prison, and the district manager received probation, community service, and a hefty fine. I was awarded a substantial settlement, which included lost wages, emotional distress damages, and compensation for career interference. But the money wasn't what mattered most to me. What I really wanted was for Helena to understand the pain and suffering she'd caused. 3 months after her sentencing, I received a handwritten letter from her, forwarded through corporate legal. In the letter, she claimed that she'd never intended to hurt me, that the inventory discrepancies were just a temporary borrowing to deal with some personal debts. She blamed me for forcing her hand by going above her head and said that if I'd just trusted her, none of this would have happened. I read the letter twice, looking for any sign of remorse or self-awareness. But all I found was self-pity and justification. She still didn't understand that what she'd done was wrong. I almost wrote back, trying to explain to her the impact of her actions on me and the other managers she'd affected. But in the end, I decided it wasn't worth it. She'd spent months in prison, and it hadn't changed her perspective. 5 years later, I'm still working in retail management. I've been promoted to Regional Operations Director, overseeing multiple stores across 2 states. I've built a team of honest, hardworking people who share my values, and we've become the highest performing region in the company. I still keep the framed document in my home office. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power and corruption, you can fight back. All it takes is attention to detail, the courage to stand up for what's right, and the willingness to document everything. If you're ever in a situation where you're being bullied or exploited at work, don't stay silent. Document everything, keep copies of all your evidence, and report it to the right people. And most importantly, never give up. You have the power to make a difference.